better never rests.
Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
Good morning, everybody. It's the Georgia Show, and for the first time in 17 years, you wake up in the morning and Nick Saban is not the coach at the University of Alabama. Nick Saban retired yesterday. Didn't feel the need to do like an emergency live show because Nick Saban doesn't coach at Georgia, and obviously I know Georgia fans don't really obviously they don't love the guy. I think you've got to respect what he had to, what he did and the impact he had on the game and the impact he had on Kirby Smart that has now bled over to Georgia. But we didn't want to cram an off topic outside of our, zone, type of thing down your throat. So here we are this morning, but we're definitely going to talk about it. And Palmer, my first question is this. Nick Saban won a national championship at LSU in 2003. Were you potty trained by then?
Who says I'm potty trained now?
Fair point.
No, 2003. I was born in 99, so I would imagine so. But,
definitely not. You were one of those 6 or 7 years old before you the
No, but I'll tell you this. I don't remember watching it. That's tells you how long ago that was. I do remember that Alabama-Texas game out at the Rose Bowl. But, I do not remember that game against LSU, and I couldn't even tell you who they
played.
It
was Oklahoma.
Oklahoma?
There was a split national championship, so it was
right.
LSU split it with USC. I honestly can't remember who USC beat in the Rose Bowl that year, but I do know that LSU beat Oklahoma. I also know that LSU team beat Georgia twice that year, beat them in Red Stick. In Baton Rouge early that season on a late touchdown pass to Skylar Green. I can't remember who the quarterback was. Was it Matty Malk at the time? I think it might have been. And then they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game in a rematch.
USC beat Michigan that year.
Yeah, okay. So USC beat Michigan.
And one in the AP and the coaches, but 3 in the BCS. Yeah.
And then LSU was number 1 in the BCS. And then LSU came back to Athens that next year and got it put on them. They had they came in as the co-national championships. And I remember being at that game, sitting on like the 40-yard line, probably the best seats I ever had as a non-media member. And I remember this guy behind me kept saying Conats. And it didn't register with me what that meant. And then finally I looked over at somebody and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? And they're like, oh, co-national champions. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. But yeah, Georgia kind of put it on them that next year. Saban moves on to the NFL in 2005. Kirby Smart joins him in the NFL in 2006. I believe Will Muschamp and Kirby Smart might have been part of that staff, if I'm not mistaken. I know Muschamp was a part of his staff for at least 1 year with the Dolphins, and then Saban comes back in 2007, struggles in that season, and then Katie bar the door, 2008 to 2000, and even this year, just kind of owned the sport. He leaves, Palmer, with I think I don't know what his overall record was, but he only went down 3 times to former assistants. One of those was Kirby, one of those was Sark, one of those was Jimbo Fisher.
28-3. So this man knew that's a dangerous lead. 28-3. That's
that's a good one. That is a good one. But he only lost 1 game to each of those guys. Kirby is one of the guys that got on that list, went 1-5 against Saban in his career. Listen, I've only had a couple of interactions with the guy, and I'll share one of them. I was at the Minority Coaches Convention one time in Atlanta, it's the attendees are primarily minorities. They have coaches from of different ethnicities and races come in and speak at that thing, and honestly it's one of the best run events for media that you could possibly attend. Those guys do a tremendous job, but I remember Coach Saban coming, and there were only 3 or 4 reporters there, and I think I called Charlie Potter over at our Bama Online site that was, we were all over at 24/7 at that point. And I hit Charlie up and I was like, hey, what do you need to know? And he sent me some questions to ask. And we all stood in front of him, and he had Tosh Lupoy there, who was an assistant coach, and he kind of treated Tosh like a SID. He's like, "Who are these guys?" And Tosh was like, "This guy, this guy, this guy, this guy." Kind of knew who we were, and I had been talking to Tosh before the interview and everything, and I started asking like pertinent Alabama questions that Charlie Potter had sent me, and then Saban looked at me and he was like, "I don't know you. Who is he again?" And it was just one of the funniest, driest things. He cracked a smile, and I was like, "Yeah, I talked. We're a part of a network, and I talked to our Alabama reporter about asking you some questions, and everything was kind of smoothed over from there." But I mean, man, listen, I know he caused Georgia some pain. I know that beating him for Georgia's drought-breaking national championship was amazing. But Jesus Christ, you have got to respect and admire what this man accomplished, and hats off to him, man. I hope retirement's really cool for him. And as Rob Ezel says in that classic clip, I hope he gets to go watch the ducks defecate in the yard. I think that'd be bring it all full circle for that Rob Ezel impression of him.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. There's definitely just a different aura in when Nick Saban walks in the room. You feel that at media days, you feel that at press conferences. Obviously, it's so clear the rub off that he has had on Kirby and the way that he's changed college football. Alabama, Nick Saban and Alabama became the standard, and it was, it elevated everything in the SEC. And obviously the run that the league has been on, since he became a part of it. LSU wins the national championship there in that 2006 season. But then
2007, but yeah. Florida was
6, yeah. LSU was 7, Florida was 8. But Nick and just the impact that he's had on this league, Alabama winning that first title there in 2009, and the 6th that have, come as a result of him being there. It's going to be weird watching Alabama. I remember we had that 2020 matchup, between Georgia and Alabama, and there was thoughts, that there was that COVID scare with him, and it was like, well, what is it going to be like with Nick Saban not on that sideline? And all of a sudden, game day comes around and he's there. It's going to be really, really weird being in Tuscaloosa next season and him not being on that sideline. And I was joking with a couple of media folks, with that SEC championship game. We were saying, well, we got to write the obligatory Kirby Saban story, and but you never knew when you were going to stop writing those, because you felt like you wrote them every time that game happened, and you just didn't know when the last one was going to be. And so, obviously, the moment that those two shared on the field before that game, SEC Inside captured that was, telling and special, and, interested to hear when Kirby speaks, what he has to say, because he certainly has a lot of respect for Nick, and very interested to see the direction that Alabama goes. And, I put it out on Twitter yesterday and said, hey, I'm really curious to see if there's going to be a UGA tie to that Alabama job, because, obviously Nick had such a ripple effect, and his coaching tree did. There's going to be some sort of tie to Kirby Smart. You got to feel like, because Kirby and Saban are so tied.
There could be. There could be. It's getting back to your point. I kind of did the math in my head. 5 different SEC teams have won a national championship after Nick Saban joined the league. Obviously, Alabama won the most. But you had Florida, Auburn, who each won one national championship after Saban, got to Alabama. LSU
Florida had the 2006 one, but then the 08 after his
08 after, right? And then LSU wins there in 2007, again in 2019. So that's, they had 2, Georgia had 2, Alabama had what,
6.
6? Yeah, so Alabama had 6. So 3 teams won it multiple times. Five SEC teams won it overall. And then, Auburn was runner up to Florida State, had a chance to win 2. Florida hasn't gotten back in a long time. I'm sure that just put a smile on some Georgia fans' faces. They haven't been back there since they won it there in that 2008 season. Alabama kind of put them to bed in that 2009 SEC championship game, and then that was it. But yeah, I mean, look at the conference, right? Look at the conference as we're about to see it. Sark, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin. I'm sure there's somebody else. Billy Napier. Is there anybody else? I'm trying to think. Not Oklahoma, not Mississippi State.
Pittman's a Kirby guy.
Right. Pittman's a Kirby guy. Beamer, I guess Lincoln Riley, technically, if you really wanted to put it that way.
Tied to Kirby in a way.
He's tied to Kirby in a way. But, I mean, a fourth of the league at least.
Stoops doesn't have a –
No, he's more actually kind of comes from the Jimbo tree a little bit, Jimbo and his brother.
But, and as we talk about some of those other assistants, Jimbo and Kirby and the ties that they had to Nick.
Yeah.
Muschamp has a DC, if you want to go talk, coaches that have been tied to Nick, God, that clip of those two just, chewing out a player on the LSU sideline always cracks me up.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's look at it like this. Now, there's a lot of talk about Dan Lanning being the next head coach at Alabama. Palmer, I've got a theory here, and a lot of folks think, well, Dan Lanning, here's how it's going to go. Dan Lanning to Alabama, then Glenn Schumann to Oregon, just like Dan Lanning. I tell you what, I am pumping the brakes on that. Not because I don't think Lanning's going to Alabama. A guy that I would watch at Alabama, and I know, listen, I get it. It doesn't make sense. But I'd watch DeMeco Ryans here. Alabama.
It does make sense though that he played.
It doesn't. Because DeMeco is an Alabama guy. He is. I remember watching him in college, and absolute model football player, extremely good student, one of the smartest dudes there is in the sport. I'm sure he loves Alabama. He's been in the NFL for a good long time. Like Matt Godwin told us, they call it the country club. They call the NFL the country club. So why would he turn that down? But then again, Nick Saban left the Miami Dolphins in an improbable fashion. He was building something there. They got the quarterback thing wrong, but they still weren't bad. And they had just had a good season the season prior to the one where I think they had a good season in 2005. And then they struggled in 2006. But that one got down to the point where Saban was like, no, I'm not going to Alabama. And then he ends up going to Alabama. So improbable things happen there. But getting back to the Lanning thing, Palmer, if Bama was to hire Dan Lanning, how eager do you think Oregon would be to jump on Glenn Schumann when Willie Taggart spent 1 year at Oregon, bolted for Florida State, first opportunity he got? Mario Cristobal spent 4 years at Oregon, bolted to Miami, first opportunity that he got. Dan Lanning will have spent 2 years there, bolted for Alabama, the first chance that he got. If I'm Oregon, you've got to think that they're going to be at least a little bit hesitant to hire another coach that would probably view them as a stepping stone, because I'm telling you this right now. If Glenn Schumann is successful at Oregon, let's say 3 or 4 years, and Kirby gets to the point where he's like, man, I'm done with this. Like it doesn't get any better on the NIL front and the, unrestricted free agency, which I do think it's going to get better in short order. I think, next 18 months, it's going to be improved. He's coming back to Athens as quick as he can get there.
No, you're right about that. I'll be honest. I don't think it's a given that, Dan would leave Oregon for Alabama. And obviously it seems that it's, trending that way. But, I think that in this new era of college football, and First of all, being the guy to replace the legend, it's not easy shoes. And you got to wonder, well, how long of a leash am I going to have at Alabama if we're not winning, national championships every, 3 years, as was the, standard under Saban. So that's a lot of pressure, and obviously money talks. But I think Oregon is paying Dan well, and he could very easily parlay, hit the ties to Alabama and that opening into a very, very, very big raise, and proper compensation there. And I think that, Oregon is in a really good spot right now. He's in 2 years, he's gotten them, in playoff contention both years. They're moving into a conference where it's one of the power conferences, and not that, obviously the Pac-12 was a part of the Power Five, but, when we're talking the big dogs, it's the SEC and the Big Ten right now. And to be moving into one of those conferences, sets you up incredibly well. Obviously, you've got the Nike money and the connection there with Phil Knight. Oregon is in a really good spot, and I don't know that I would be leaving that to try to go follow in the footsteps of Nick Saban. That being said, if that were to happen, you're right. Obviously, the Glenn Schumann talk will begin. Glenn Schumann to Oregon, and Oregon goes and does the same thing and replaces its head coach with a Georgia DC. It just, not that it didn't make sense when Dan did it, because in terms of, ties to Oregon and the area, and it wouldn't make sense with Glenn. I don't see that. I'm with you. I don't really see that happening. So, I just, to me, I think, Glenn Schumann, I don't know. I feel like he'd be better off as an NFL defensive coordinator than a college head coach. And I for his sake, I hope I'm wrong. But I think that, it would be interesting to see. And, you might be right there that, Oregon would want to go maybe try to find a guy that they feel is going to stick around longer.
I mean, I do think that if Oregon wanted Glenn Schumann, like if Lanning took the Bama job and Oregon wanted Glenn Schumann, I do believe he would take it. I absolutely believe he would take it. I just think if I'm Oregon, I'm very, very cautious about hiring another guy with all those ties to the Southeast. It's just going to bolt for the Southeast, because Oregon is a phenomenal job. And, I don't know what Dan Lanning will do. I see what you say. I mean, it's, on one hand, I'd love to have his chance to get it wrong, because that means I'm rich. Yeah. All right. And then I don't have to, I can move out on my 30 acres and somewhere between Arcade and Nicholson, and I can build my barn dominium. Yes, right. Build my barn dominium with a studio in there, and we can turn this thing into the Pat McAfee show or something of sorts. But that one's a tough one too, because if you're Lanning, you're sitting there like, do I want to follow a legend? To borrow the Jim Harbaugh phrase, who has it better than us over here at Oregon? Because listen, that NIL money, that Phil Knight NIL money, and those facilities over there are top notch. And, I was listening to Bruce Feldman talk to Ryan Russillo about it this morning as I was out running errands really early. And, he said that, he made a good point that Lanning has a young family, and, they've gotten pretty settled there. So I'm really fascinated to see what's going to happen there. Is there going to be a big buyout? What we know, though, and listen, shout out to Bama Online, because Tim Watts and our crew over there do a phenomenal job. Dan Lanning was not in Tuscaloosa last night, so that was BS on the part of whoever was reporting. Dan Lanning is not in Tuscaloosa. He might be there this morning, but he was not there last night. And our Bama Online folks had that nailed.
Last night, as in before midnight.
Oh, Jesus Christ, You may not be potty trained after all. No, I'm just messing with you. You know, it's, I mean, Brian Bivens. First of all, I wanted to address the Nick Saban never sniffed the playoffs with Miami. He absolutely sniffed them. He didn't get there, but he went 9-7 there and narrowly missed them. I believe it was in 2005.
2005. Yep, second in the AFC East.
But one of the reasons Saban left the NFL, and one of the reasons I think maybe DeMeco Ryans would do it, I doubt it, but maybe, is because you're not outworking anybody in the NFL. You can't practice harder than anybody. You can't practice more physical than anybody. There's a collective bargain. You can't be in the building more than anybody, really. I mean, unless somebody's just not you making good use of the time. It's incredibly tough to outwork people and dominate in the NFL. Bill Belichick didn't outwork people in the NFL. He outsmarted people in the NFL for a long time, and since I think he got let go this morning as well. I haven't seen that personally, but it was on our board earlier. And again, Timothy, I'm sorry I don't know your last name, but I tend to agree with you. But I don't know. It's improbable, but I thought Saban to Alabama last time was improbable, down to the point that Saban said he wasn't going. And then, there's another one, Brian Bivens, my man here, says any chance Urban Meyer gets a look. Don't see it. Don't see it. You want to talk, I mean, Alabama's a program, Palmer, and I think you would agree with this. And I consider Georgia to be a program like this too, that loves stability. It loves kind of the idea of long-term sustained success. My 4-year-old is less of a flake than Urban Meyer is. Okay. And that's one guy. Listen, there's some guy, most of the coaches in the sport, I'm like, man, awesome. He's great. He's awesome. Urban Meyer can flat out coach some ball, crappy human being. And I don't care what anybody says. Him and Hugh Freeze both, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So Palmer, what do you think about the transfer portal? And it sounds like that SEC to SEC will be allowed, as Alabama's players are eligible to enter the transfer portal for an extra 30 days. But then we've got this whole drop ad, thing going on. I've got a little note on that as well.
Yeah, I saw the note from Pete Nakos, who was on top of it, that he's received clarification from the SEC that Alabama athletes will be able to transfer inside the conference. I said, put it in our DawgsHQ chat, I think, but I said, if those guys weren't able to transfer within the conference, you knew Nick Saban knew that was absolutely a planned exit, the part of the retirement idea there to keep Alabama sustained. There's a lot of guys on that Alabama team that Georgia would love to have. They would have loved to have them the first go around, and they'd love to have them now. And I think that Georgia will take a look at some of those guys. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, we've seen the decommitment of 5-star wide receiver Ryan Williams, who did not sign back in December, originally a 2025 kid that reclassified to 2024. That seems to be trending Auburn's way, has been for a little while. And so the decommitment there is a domino of the Nick Saban thing, but also, very well could have happened had Saban been coaching. I have not seen any of the players enter the portal. I'll be curious to see if they wait to see who this new head coach is, before they make any sort of rash decision, or if we're going to start to see some of those come out today. And I know the paperwork on that takes 48 hours, so could be tomorrow that we start to see those. Could be 2 days from now, if those guys, are able to get that paperwork going today. And then the processing of it takes 48 hours. But ultimately a lot of it comes down to Georgia having to have spots, because Georgia players can't go into the portal now. Georgia players can't, if they do enter the portal in May, they can't transfer within the SEC. And so Georgia's got to get rid of that. They've already got to get rid of some guys to get to the 85 number. To add to that, you have to get rid of even more guys. And so, I think that certainly plays a part. Would it surprise me if they were to add, one or two guys? No, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I mean,
maybe they do. Maybe they have to lose some guys to get under the 85 because I mean, listen, we don't know. We don't know everything, right? And there are some graduates on the team. There are some guys that have already graduated that might be, might have earned some sort of graduate scholarship, and maybe they're able to take what they're earning in NIL to, maybe they're taking what they've earned in NIL to take care of the rest of their stuff. Like we don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that's happening, but right now I think it's at 88. Is that right, Palmer?
I'll have to check. It's either 88 or 89.
Yeah, it's one of those. And, so you got 85 scholarships. Right now, we've got 88 to 89 players that we believe to be on scholarship at Georgia.
It is 88. The 89 number would have included
Mayava.
Right,
yeah. And listen, that's not as of this moment. So to break that down for you, that's with the 6 guys that are supposed to be enrolling this summer involved. So as of right this moment for spring practice, Georgia is at 82.
Good math there, Jake.
So ultimately, I'm going to take a guy like Xavier Truss here, okay? Xavier Truss, I believe, has graduated at Georgia. If I'm not mistaken, maybe he hasn't. If he hasn't, he's on the Stetson Bennett path, okay? Because he's been around a long time. Micah Morris. Let's take Micah Morris, for example. Micah Morris got his degree at Georgia. Super impressive. He only got it 4 years faster than I did at Georgia. So Micah Morris has his degree at Georgia. If there's a situation where Micah gets a graduate scholarship to get into grad school that takes care of, a large portion of everything that he needs to do that, and then maybe he only needs a couple more grand to do it, and they're able to cover that via NIL, and he's able to make some more NIL money on top of that, then that's the guy that may not fit under that. It may not be on full athletic scholarship at Georgia, and I'm sure Georgia welcomes that. You take a guy like, I'm going to bring up Drew Bobo, right? Drew Bobo's dad works at Georgia, makes $1 million a year. Would Drew decide? Would Drew be in a situation where he would be like, all right, now, I don't have to be on a scholarship. My dad's rich, but we make a lot of money. I don't know.
Would his dad be the one to, kind of push that decision?
Yeah. But
hey, Drew, you can't be on scholarship. I really want Trevor Etienne.
Yeah, these are hypotheticals, and I think we know enough at this point that Lab McConkey came to Georgia as a preferred walk-on, under the guise of kind of being on a scholarship, and got put on a scholarship after year one. I can't remember some player. I believe it was Marcus Rosenby Jackson or somebody after the Orange Bowl just explicitly said that, was like, hey, Lad, man, he came in here and he earned that scholarship. There are creative ways to get around that.
The whole gray shirt, and obviously,
I don't even know how much of that there's left, though. To be honest with you, it's so ambiguous. But ultimately,
it's a guessing game. The 85 number is such a guessing game.
But what we're getting at here is that the numbers aren't going to be a problem, and I believe. Listen, Georgia's still trying to add via the transfer portal. And they're going to lose via the transfer portal. They're going to, like I could see, 5-6 guys leaving after spring practice. And I've got those names in my head. I'm not going to say them because I don't want to make it seem like I think these guys should go or that I don't think highly of them as a player. But ultimately, Alabama is probably going to have some guys enter the transfer portal.
Yeah.
It's probably going to have some coaching staff shakeup. And, it's not like the guy
already has. I mean, and they did before.
Yeah,
Saban,
I've got 2. I believe they got 2 open spots right now, don't they? They need a defensive coordinator,
wide receivers, and defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So we're just getting started on this, really. And if there's some transfer portal activity, I'm sure Georgia's going to be interested. Now, one note I will drop. So classes began at Georgia on January the 8th.
Monday.
Drop ad, I believe, ends Monday, if I'm not mistaken. I think drop ad ends on Monday. And if you went to college, you understand that drop ad is kind of the, date that you have to have your schedule set by. Now, technically, a player has to enroll in classes by the start of
drop ad date is Friday.
Okay. Is today. Oh, tomorrow. Sorry.
Tomorrow.
God, I thought today was Friday. So if you went to college, you understand drop ad is the day you have to have your schedule set by. Technically, I spoke with a source this morning who told me that transfer players actually have to be enrolled, not necessarily have signed up for their classes, but they have to be enrolled by the start of classes, not by the end of drop ad, by the start of classes. Now, there are special exceptions that can be made to that. And I think that is up to the administration. I'm not sure if it goes all the way up to the president or not, but there are special exceptions that can be made to that. And Georgia has made special exceptions like that in the past, like when Jamie Newman, I believe it was, committed to Georgia, like on the last day of drop ad. That's when he committed, didn't arrive until I think a week or more later. I think I spoke to somebody then. I think he had at that point by the 20th, but that was something that was allowed, and probably because he was a graduate, there was probably a little leeway there as well. But
was that a January arrival?
Jamie Newman?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. He was he arrived at Georgia and went through walkthroughs and was set to go through spring practice. That didn't happen, and
right.
Then he opted out.
And of course, Georgia has taken some players that weren't expected to be a part of their spring practice program and or didn't end up being a part of that.
Right. Yeah, that's true
program.
too.
So, that could end up being the case here. And those kids would be going through, Tyke Smith was that way. Tyke Smith was and I can't remember, obviously the portal has changed and now they've got the windows,
right,
as opposed to it kind of just being an always open thing. But Tyke was somebody that, if I recall, committed to Georgia right around the spring game, and so was not part of Georgia's spring practice plans. And Georgia, they didn't end up taking anybody from the second transfer window last year, but it wouldn't be unprecedented, is what I'm saying, is that, if a kid is not able to meet those, those deadlines of classes having started already and ad drop being, 24 hours from now and, being, getting going here in Athens, it wouldn't be unprecedented for Georgia to still take a kid like that and bring them into the program if they're the right fit.
No doubt. And let me tell you right now, if for some reason Caleb Downs got in there, I'm trying to find a good analogy, trying to find a good metaphor here. I mean, Kirby Smart would run over kittens and old ladies to get him on the roster. There's no doubt about it. And that Georgia would break its back trying to get Caleb Downs on the roster. I mean, can you imagine? And I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying it may happen. I'm just saying, but could you imagine if Georgia had Malachi Starks at free safety, Caleb Downs at strong safety, and then KJ Bolden
as the backup,
kind of backing him up, and then Jonel Aguero, another elite safety from right there in the same little playing star. All of a sudden, the narrative would have shifted from why can't Georgia get elite safeties to Georgia getting all of them. I mean, every day, and just every single one of them. So, we'll have your eye out. And listen, there's no better place to follow it than DawgsHQ. We're not out here talking unsubstantiated rumors. We're not out here talking about any of that stuff. But listen, when we say it and we tell you what's going on, take it to the bank. That's all I'm saying. So, ultimately that's, we vet our information. We're not saying we're not wrong sometimes, but it's rare, and we'll have the transfer portal covered for you. We'll have all the coaching movement, covered for you as it relates to Georgia. And we're excited about it. $1 for 1 month. That's always there if you want to come check us out. And we'll be back with you on Sunday night for the Georgia show. It's our only night show now, a night look at the Georgia show. And then we'll Bark After Dark on Monday. Then Tuesday, Thursday mornings, we'll be back with you. But for this episode, Palmer, do you have anything else you want to share? Have you come to any sort of epiphany on whether or not you were still using diapers when Nick Saban won the national championship?
I'll share on the Hoop Hounds.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about them Hoop Hounds.
10 wins in a row. I saw a comment in there earlier, and so if I'm a little bit sluggish this morning, bags under my eyes, it's I was at Stegman Coliseum past midnight. So Hoop Hounds get the big win over Arkansas. I did not see that coming. They
who did though? Who told you when we were in Gatlinburg for the Tennessee game? Who said, "Hey, does Georgia get Arkansas midweek?" And you said yes, and I said Georgia's going to win that game, and you argued with me.
I guess it was you. I mean, I argue everything, Jake.
You do that. You do that. You are a I think therefore I am type guy for sure.
I'll argue that I argued with you. So
we're getting there. We're getting there. Get out of here before I threaten to murder Palmer on the air.
Try to strangle me through the camera.
No, I can't do that. I know my limits. All right, y'all take care. We'll see you on Sunday night.